A few moments for everyone to get logged on. When you join the meeting, you'll be muted, but feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions, or you can also utilize the chat here if you have any questions throughout the meeting. I'll briefly introduce Montessori Thrive. So if you're joining our town hall for the first time, welcome. We host these every single Thursday as a safe space for Montessori school leaders to come together and discuss various leadership topics. It's a really niche community, but it's one that's full of helpful people willing to exchange resources and answer each other's questions. So these town halls are just a great space to connect with other people who are in your same position. These are always free to join, and they're always on Thursday from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern. So feel free to spread the word and invite fellow Montessori leaders. The more, the merrier. Every week, we like to discuss a different topic. If you ever have any topic suggestions, let us know in the chat, or you can also reach out to me. I'll share my email in the chat later. I organize these every week. This week, we're really happy to be welcoming Reena Morgan. She's actually spoken at one of our town halls before, and it's been really great. She's here to talk about confronting conflict, something that we as administrators unfortunately have to deal with from time to time. So she'll go ahead and give her presentation. And again, as I mentioned, feel free to drop anything in the chat, and hopefully there'll be some time for Q&A at the end. All right, Reena, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this space for everyone. I'm so glad that you guys offer these. So thank you. So I'm going to, sorry. Oh, I just jumped right into it. I wasn't sure if I had an intro for myself. I'll just give a quick intro of who I am. I'm Reena Morgan. I have been in the Montessori community for over 20 years. I taught for 7 of those years, and then I was an administrator myself for the last 13 years. And then I'm sure you all can relate, like all things COVID, I decided to shift gears a little bit. And I'm now just doing consulting and coaching on my own. So I was in the private sector of Montessori for a while. Now I'm more supporting in the public sector of Montessori as a coach and consultant. And then I also am a certified parenting coach as well. And I'm really excited to speak to this topic because I see this as a consultant and a coach in different schools and spaces. This is just something I think also what I'm calling the COVID effect has bubbled up in a lot of spaces. So I feel really passionate about this topic. I would love to actually start by engaging you all for a moment, whether you want to unmute and say something or type it in the chat. But what comes to mind when you hear the word conflict? Making it interactive. I see the chat coming up. Resolution. Let's see, you guys are Montessorians. Of course you start with that. Issues with parents, uncomfortable. Yeah. I like that. Typically, yeah, conflict, problem, that there's a problem. Yeah. All right. Thank you for sharing. So I'm going to try to hide the chat. So yes, exactly. So typically when we hear the word conflict, we think about tension or disagreement, or sometimes even avoidance, sometimes bullying or opposition, misalignment, competing priorities. And yes, this very much can be something that you see with parents and teachers, parents and administrators and teachers, right? So it's definitely something that when we think of this, it can kind of take on these negative connotations, the list that I have here. However, I do like that, who is it? Vicky started with resolution. And so for sure, I like that was a positive word that you put with the word conflict, because we can also see conflict as a healthy opportunity for being able to respectfully disagree, to seek to understand, to learn other perspectives, right? To take an opportunity to share differences and opinions and hopefully work together to solve problems collaboratively. And this last one here, clear is kind, that typically, if I go back to this slide here, sometimes, oh, no, I can't go back. Never mind. Sorry. But sometimes we avoid conflict, right? And I think teachers are kind of sometimes notorious for this because we don't want to cause waves. But by not addressing the conflict, we're actually creating sometimes more issues, right? Other people might know that there's an issue, but the people that need to know there's really an issue aren't hearing what the issues are. So I'd like to put this phrase clear is kind, because when we can actually address it with the right people in the right way, and the right processes, that we actually can do a better job getting to the solutions. And I strongly believe that when we can communicate clearly, effectively, efficiently, that really is doing a service and a kindness to others, rather than avoiding. I'm going to go to this next slide, which is some of the proactive work in trying to get ahead of conflicts. And again, they're going to be prevalent whether you try these proactive strategies or not, but it's just how intense or severe might those conflicts be if we can try to, again, get ahead of them a little bit. So really setting expectations. So I would say even starting with onboarding of new faculty and staff, onboarding of parents, right? Just being really clear about what your community's norms, your values, the boundaries are. So things like, for example, for parents, when you're onboarding new parents, as a Montessori school, right? And hopefully your mission statement is a good guiding value that you could make sure you are almost picking apart a little bit with your parents. What do those values entail that are within your mission statement? Very much at that time, when you're onboarding new parents, so either that's in the spring when you've just finished new enrollment, they're supposed to start in the fall, or whether that's the fall, but there definitely should be some onboarding that just helps, again, with establishing just norms and boundaries around respect, right? So if there is any concern around their child, that they're speaking directly sort of in the rank of order, the teacher, and then if the teacher's not they're not able to be effective, then maybe it's an administrator, right? But we want to avoid, and we also want to give parents grace and benefit of the doubt. They might not know the proper procedures or orders, right? So if there is a concern and when they go right to administrator, then a teacher sometimes feels like, what the heck? They skipped right over me, or like, right? So it can sort of hurt that partnership. Very much so, not just, I think there's communication in general is such an important part of building relationships and establishing relationships. And so again, so that there's clear processes and procedures to know, the order of communication. So again, teacher, then administrator, and even administrator might just be the teacher supervisor if there's a like levels coach or levels director, but going right to the principal right in the beginning is not actually going to be the most effective way to solve a parent's issue. And nor do you as principals need to have that sort of micromanaging so quickly. It really also makes the teachers feel like there's not that trust and partnership in them, or if there is a levels director, right? So you want to be able to entrust that they can sort of be the first line of defense and attack if there is a concern or an issue. So again, knowing just communication protocols when there are concerns, even just little things like really clear boundaries around when the teachers are accessible and available, so that a teacher also doesn't feel like this parent's, contacting me at all times of the day expecting a response right away, whatever. But that we're really clear about that, because again, a lot of us, especially because of COVID, have blurred the lines a little bit about sort of when that work day starts and ends, and parents sometimes forget that teachers should not have to respond to emails 24/7. And again, just to preserve the relationship, that's just clear. With staff too, right? What are the expectations of staff so that they also know, yes, you should respond to a parent's email within 24 to 48 hours, right? Or if there is a concern with a parent and you feel like it's starting to escalate, they should be informing administration. They should be, right? So on all parties, that there's really clear processes and procedures. And so even onboarding new staff and faculty, that is something that's really clear, that there shouldn't be any gray areas, right? So really even thinking about what have been some issues in the past at your school, and was there a clear process or procedure or protocol in our staff and faculty handbook or in our parent handbook? And again, that's also assuming they're going to read the handbook. So if it is, there are opportunities, again, with like orientation meetings for faculty and staff, that you're highlighting some of these things for them, and same with parents. Absolutely, as administrators, we are always leading by example. So just even if you catch yourself, right, like, oh, I shouldn't have gone to this parent first about something. I should have gone to the teacher. So when you do make a mistake, acknowledge it, right? But ideally, you're following the same processes and procedures. So if a parent comes right to you as the administrator, the first thing we should ask is, did you go to the teacher first? Right? Uphold those boundaries and values that you're setting. And you can say, with all due respect, I am not trying to minimize your concerns. I just want to make sure that we're following the proper processes and procedures, because the teacher entrusts me to make sure that we are upholding the protocols. So we have to make sure we're modeling by and leading by example. Addressing toxic behaviors. And we're going to get into this a little bit more in some of the next slides with learning some conflict resolution strategies. But I really strongly believe that, right, the more we know that there's that toxic parent or that toxic staff member, and we just kind of let it fester, it's never, a good thing, hoping that it just goes away, or like, oh, that's just them, right? We just kind of write it off as like, don't take it seriously, whatever. But toxic people permeate toxicity. So addressing it early, clearly, and kindly, and with compassion, with what I genuinely believe, right? When anyone, if you're sort of calling them, instead of calling them out, you're calling them in, right? And as Montessorians, we're probably really good at this with children, right? We know not to shame, not to guilt, not to, again, make them feel quote unquote bad for their mistakes. And the same with should go for adults, right? That when we see quote unquote like this mistakes or this toxic behavior that could be, again, speaking poorly about someone, or not following the proper protocols or procedures, right? And doing it just the way they want to do it because they're just not being whatever, for whatever reason. But to be able to call them in without shame, without guilt, but with kindness and compassion, to say, hey, I do, this is important that we talk about this because I have been noticing, right? I'm assuming something's going on, like, right? Always assume good intent, and intent versus impact, right? When we assume good intent, we can also then assume that they didn't intend for the impact to seem like a negative thing. But you can be clear, that clear is kind, right? And to say, hey, I'm pretty sure, when you, after that faculty meeting, when you, made that comment about so-and-so's idea, I feel like your intent was probably because you had liked somebody else's idea. However, when you made that inappropriate comment, like that really actually was kind of inappropriate. Like it made the space of our faculty meetings not feel safe. And it's my job to make sure everyone feels safe and everyone's voices and opinions are matter here, right? Same with parents, right? They make some off comments. We want to make sure everyone feels safe emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. And it's our job to nip that if we see anyone being unkind, bullying, saying things that we know are just not appropriate. And again, that's going, you can always go back to the values. What are our community's values, and establishing and upholding what you're doing is upholding the values. Yeah. I'm going to actually now move into some more of what I call the conflict resolution strategies. And a big one is active and reflective listening skills. I will say the next few slides are combined with my parent coaching work that I do. I'm a certified parent coach, but I do believe so many of these strategies are just like human coaching, especially when we're confronted with conflict. So when you see tensions are high, whether it's with a faculty member, whether it's with a colleague, whether it's with a parent. And when I say you need to address and nip toxic behaviors, right? We don't want to do it in front of everyone else, right? We don't want to shame, we don't want to guilt, we don't want to embarrass. And we also don't want to do it when the tension's high. Like if they are, you can tell in fight or flight mode, which we'll get to in a moment about like nervous system response stuff. You want to do it and you want to invite them, within a 24 or 48-hour period to address what might need to get addressed. And when you do invite them in, really it's a listening meeting. It should be an active and reflective listening meeting. So not judging them, not saying, you were really rude yesterday or like that, but really starting by getting curious. Help me understand, right? You can validate the feelings. You can take what I call empathy guesses. Like I'm going to guess, right, that when you made that comment, it seemed like you were upset about something, but I'm not sure what. Can you help me understand? Am I right even? Are you upset about something? And so really starting with getting curious. As they share with you what might be on their mind, repeating back to validate their feelings, to validate their concerns, and to make sure you're hearing it correctly, that you're trying to understand what exactly is the thing. Because also the behaviors that present, right, the toxic like behaviors that might be showing is really because of a feeling that's underneath there, right? So I'm just going to like say this even twice. All behaviors are sort of the conduit or the vessel for a feeling. So whether it's even a happy behavior, right? Like whether it's like a big hug, it's because we like are excited and we have joy and love in our hearts. That's the underlying feeling, and the action or the behavior is giving a hug. And then on the other side, when we yell or get angry, right? The behavior is to yell, but the underlying feeling is anger. And this is with children, this is with adults, right? That every behavior has an underlying feeling. So what we're trying to do is, okay, there was a behavior that might have created some conflict, right? Or some discomfort. And what is that behavior? What's underlying there? What's that feeling that's underlying? And so when you're trying to get at the root of the conflict, you're really trying to understand the feelings that may have led to the behaviors. So when we are doing this active listening, right, that we are not interrupting, we are, if anything, just trying to sort of paraphrase back to make sure we understand, not judging, not labeling, not comparing. And this last one, we are not yet offering advice. We really want to make sure that they are first able to just sort of unload everything that is coming up for them. When we start going too quickly into, let me tell you how you could have handled that or should have handled that, or here's what I would do differently, or here's my suggestion. Sometimes they're not ready to receive it yet, right? They may not have been able to process everything that they're kind of feeling or making their own dots and connections. And oftentimes when we do this reflective listening and we do just validate, and we even give sort of sometimes longer pauses when you might think they might be done speaking, but we wait that extra minute or two, they themselves often will connect the dots and come to even the place that you might not have to go, which is, I know I didn't handle that well yesterday. I should have done it better or differently, or I should have said something or not said something or whatever, right? Oftentimes when you just listen and hold space for them to process, they can recognize where they need to grow, right? So, and if they're not getting there, and if it's just like blah, 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 on and on of just the venting, at some point you can say, right, like I respect, and it might just even be a few times that you need to meet and say, gosh, it looks like you have a lot on your mind. I want to really be mindful of your time and this and all the things that you're processing. Should we reschedule and meet again? And next time when we meet, I'd love to continue to hear what you have to say. And I also want to try to think and work towards some resolutions. If you have any, great. If not, I'd love to offer some, right? And or you can do that in that meeting time frame too, of shifting course if they are willing and open to shifting to brainstorming resolutions. But again, offer for them first to see what they may have. I hear you say this. I'm wondering if you think that was effective or not, or if you think there might be a different way that you would have handled that next time, or right. So you're putting the ball in their court to first hopefully be reflective enough to come up with some hopefully resolutions or answers to help resolve the conflict. And if they're like, I don't know, I was right, and in your mind you're like, there was definitely different ways to handle that, then you could say, I so appreciate the perspectives that you're sharing, you're giving me. Would it be okay if I can share some thoughts that I had around how it may could have gone differently, or how I may move forward now with just a couple tweaks to what you're saying? And so again, ask permission, because they'll be more open and willing to hear it rather than just jumping into how you think this needs to be solved or resolved. This comes from, sorry, I hope it's big enough for you guys. It comes from Thomas Kilman. He writes a lot on conflict resolution. And I just liked this chart because it was a good reminder of, he calls it conflict resolution strategies. To me, it's like, these are, I don't know if we're resolving the conflict. They're different ways to handle conflict. But I think we could all agree that these are different ways that again, how someone might go about managing conflict, and sometimes unsuccessfully. So I thought this was interesting. So if you look here, there's the unassertive, assertive, cooperative, uncooperative. And then compromising is in the middle, which when I was reading more about conflict resolution and this model in particular, I thought that was interesting that compromising is in the middle. And the reason Thomas Kilman does this is because somebody still feels like they had to give something up, whereas collaborating feels like everybody wins. So it's both cooperative, and you're feeling like assertive in that, meaning you felt like your needs got met in this situation, and the cooperative is that, and you feel like somebody else's needs got met, and so therefore collaborative. Whereas compromising can be in the middle, because in some way somebody still feels like I compromised, I had to give something up, that I didn't feel like I was fully, able to assert myself, or fully able to let the other person have what they wanted, right? So somebody might be compromising, which I thought was interesting in this model. So collaborating, right? When people can feel like this is truly a collaborative process, is ideally the most successful way to work to resolve a conflict. If somebody is being very assertive and uncooperative, there's then competing priorities, competing goals, right? If they're being unassertive and uncooperative, then they're just avoiding it. They're not even addressing. Whereas like here, right, both people are assertive, or at least even if one is, right, assertive and uncooperative, you want what you want. And this is, you've got to have it your way. And we can see this, right? Sometimes with parents of, nope, and often, right, with private school parents, sometimes they'll say, well, I'm paying for this and I expect this. And that's not really how it works. And then again, avoiding, sometimes we see this with teachers, I'll just, not say anything. So they're not asserting what their needs might be. And again, not necessarily doing the thing that they might need to do, but they're just avoiding it altogether. And then accommodating is when we're unassertive and cooperative. But again, accommodating can sometimes be left with feeling like your needs aren't getting met, your voice isn't being heard, what your needs and priorities aren't being taken into consideration, but you're accommodating other people. Actually, teachers are here too, a lot too. So I just think it's important that everyone in the collaborating space feels heard, and it might not be exactly right, the perfect solution for one person or another person, but together they feel like this is a good enough approach where everyone's feeling like they were heard and that they've come to a resolution that feels good for all. This is I mentioned this earlier. When you're trying to, sorry, I can't go back to my other slide, but when you're trying to work in that collaborative space with others, right? It's not easy to always get there, right? Because often there's when conflicts arise, there's heightened, elevated emotions that typically, like I had said earlier, right, that our behaviors. So a parent might be really upset about something, or a faculty member might be really upset about something, and they come in with the angry behavior or the upset behaviors. And of course, underlying that are these feelings that might be the parents really upset because they feel like their child is slipping through the cracks or something, or a teacher's really upset because they feel like there's yet another change in the schedule or something, and it's just really disruptive to their prep time or something. And when they come in that heightened emotion, again, that reflecting, that listening, that active reflective listening model that I'd shown you is a great way to respond, especially when you can see that someone's stress response system is elevated. So all of us have this sort of primal stress response system. It's when I sometimes even describe the like if you're driving in your car and you hear police sirens and you see the lights coming, like your armpits get a little sweaty and you hold the steering wheel a little more firmly, and your jaws clench a little, and then it passes, and then all of a sudden, like, whew, you can feel the release of like, oh, good, it wasn't me that they were coming after. And so that's your stress response system going into like the yellow zone, I would say, right? You're not totally activated, but that's your nervous system kicking in a little bit around like, ooh, what I'm feeling a little like I need to be prepared for something, right? And that's wonderful because our system, our body, and our biological nervous system is doing what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to activate us and get us ready for fight or flight, right? But not all stressors are, or hopefully no one's stressors are saber-toothed tigers anymore. But again, we know that this is an evolutionary thing from our being able to survive, right? But now our stressors could be, right, an angry parent, a colleague who's being really uncooperative. There are so many stressors, a child who's really acting up. Um, you can name it, right? I'm sure you all have lots of examples of what causes stress these days. And our fight or flight nervous system kicks in then with these stressors, right? And so we might be able to manage them and be in the yellow zone, right? We might see like, okay, like I can feel my jaws clenching. I can feel like heat in my body rising. I can tell I'm getting a little frustrated right now in this response or this interaction. And I'm going to breathe through it. I'm going to try not to let it escalate, and hopefully you can stay in that space of that active reflective listening. And this is really important too. When you're in that space and somebody's just spewing like all their stuff, you might start to like find yourself in a stress response system in a yellow zone of like, oh my God, how dare they? And they're being so ridiculous and ungrateful, whatever. If you catch yourself like starting to go in the stress response system, just like, no, 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 no. They're in a stress response state. They are in a fight mode, probably, if they're coming to you with all these concerns, or flight mode, they're avoiding you and not wanting to talk with you. But typically, right, when you're in this conversation, they're in fight mode. Don't join their stress, right? Try to be the calm in this situation to help, again, de-escalate the conflict. So knowing and just recognizing and just like naming it. Oh, they're in a fight or flight stress response state. This is an emotion, not an emergency, right? And my body too. This is my emotions are starting to bubble up. This is not an emergency. And recognizing for that person who's in that moment is like, they might think it's an emergency. Like, you need to address this right now. This parent's or this, and they will come at you as if this is an emergency because they're in their fight or flight stress response mode, right? They are stressed out and they need this taken care of right now. And you as the administrator, what are you doing? And how come you're not handling this right now? But like, just remind yourself, okay, they're in an emotional state. They feel like this is an emergency. I will hold space for them. And so that's what co-regulation is, right? And we can do this with children. We can do this with other adults. We can do this with our spouses. This is a great strategy that I highly recommend, because if you get caught up and elevated by their stress, then now you're both stressed. And that's where more conflict and more tension and more chaos will continue to fester. But if you can stay regulated and you can stay calm, eventually they join your calm. And a lot of that is just validating. Wow, I see you're really upset right now. I hear you. I hear that's really frustrating. You don't have to go into solving it. You don't have to be like, where is that parent? Let me go talk to them right now. Or I'll like handle this just a second. No, you don't have to solve. You're not in solve mode. You're just in empathy and validating mode. So you are just, and really why you're doing that is to try to bring them back down to calm, because they are like offline. Their emotional brain is kicked in. Their logical brain cannot process anything that you have to offer. So don't go into solve mode when your colleague or your parent or whatnot are in this heightened stress response mode. It's just try to bring them through you staying regulated and validating and just empathizing their feelings and naming their feelings, because right, all behaviors are just underlying for a feeling, or the feeling, there's an underlying feeling. Just try to empathy guess. Gosh, it feels like you're really upset right now, or it feels like this is a really frustrating conversation that you just had with this parent. Oh, I get that. I hear you. So ideally, you want to bring them to calm so then you can move into solve. And this is called the peace process. And again, this is through my coaching work that I do. And I love that I found this Montessori quote on, wait, sorry, of course, like something's blocking, so I can't read it. Yeah. What is that first word? Can you read it for me? Because something's like blocking and I can't move it. Oh no, here, preventing. That's the word. Preventing conflicts is the work of politics. Establishing peace is the work of education, by Dr. Montessori. Excuse me. So I love that this quote is pretty much it, right? When we are in conflict, it's typically like, it's just creating, if we don't address it in a peaceful approach, we're just going to continue to fester, or again, the problems don't genuinely get solved. But when we come at it from this place of peace, and that's where I strongly go back to, like, we have to be the calm, we have to be the models as the administrators. We are leading by example by being that solid, calm force. And so this peace process, right? It's how we present ourselves physically. We might need to slow down. We might even, and I put low on here because if you're even in a position where you are actually like sitting at a height, a level that is taller than the person who might be, struggling right now, you can just look like this, like strong power of like authority, and they might be feeling attacked even though you don't intend it to be, right? So actually get at the same eye level or even lower, just to like avoid any feeling of this. If they're already in a defense mode, we don't want them to feel more defensive. So I strongly always recommend, like, if you're sitting, in a meeting one-on-one with someone, make sure the chairs are of even level, because you don't ever want to be in a chair that's like, I am showing you my position of power by actually elevating myself, because that never feels good for anyone. But genuinely, like, I'm in a position of working and collaborating with you, and we are going to be at the same eye level together. So again, when they are in their heightened state of emotion, that's very similar to in the Montessori classroom, right? When the false fatigue kicks in and the energy is a little bit stronger and louder and higher. And then we as the Montessori guides have to go softer and slower and lower. It's the same kind of thing, right? We're trying to sort of build that co-regulation by hopefully bringing them into our uber calmness, our uber zenness, so that they can join us there. And again, we might not be perfect at this, but just recognizing that fight or flight state in your own bodies is important. And then empathy. Again, that's that validating, right? And I put in here, it's okay to take care of your needs first. So if you're recognizing you're starting to get charged, do your deep breaths. If you're not in a place of like, I can't empathize yet with this parent or this teacher because to me, they feel like they're attacking me. Just like do your breaths, do your self-talk, and say, like, they are in their fight or flight mode. Their emotional brains are what's guiding, not their logical brains. I can be the logical person. I can stay calm. I can manage this, right? And so then when you feel like you've talked through and you're in a calmer space, you can just validate by just literally naming what you're seeing in terms of, again, those empathy guesses. It looks like you're really upset. I hear you saying you're really frustrated. I am listening. I'm holding space for it, right? And then accept what is necessary and reprioritize and I like, sorry, this avoiding judgment, focusing on the other person's experience. So as much as you can, again, in that moment, you might want to jump to problem solving, but just accept that, no, I'm in a space, they're not yet ready for it. And you might have to reprioritize in that you might need to say, like, we need to solve this now. And this, like, whatever you're upset about, like, we don't have time for this. No, it's actually not going to actually get you to the healthier conflict resolution that you need to. You might have to reprioritize and say, we might need to table this. Like, we might not have a resolution as quickly as I wish we did because people are still upset or frustrated about this. So I'm going to just hold space for other folks to get to a calmer place so that we can resolve right when they're ready. And again, we can't judge them for, like, gosh, you were like really taking a long time to calm down off your anger or whatever it might be. No, it's okay. Like, they hopefully will get there. And again, we don't want to join their where they are. We want them to hopefully come into our calm. So just continue to focus and validate where they're feeling so that ideally, eventually the anger subsides and they can just be in a calmer space to listen and move to the next step, which in this process is conscious communication. So again, you're actively listening, reflecting, and ideally through that, like, it's very sort of Socratic method questioning, right? That we can hopefully start to move them is, I hear you're really upset. I see that you're upset. So that's just the validating piece. I wonder what it was exactly that you think made you this angry. Or I wonder, and you can even say, like, oftentimes we talk about with parents, especially, hopes and fears. I wonder what your fear is right now. It sounds to me like you're worried about something. You're worried that your child's not getting the attention that they need. I wonder what is it that makes you think that, right? And so then ideally you're just still planting these seeds of questions to hopefully get to that last one, the E, exploring solutions together, and focusing then on what's the end goal, right? Like, we all want children, we're all here for the children. And so what is it right now in this situation that we feel like is or is not happening, so that we can hopefully align the goals, the priorities. And I put this in here too, co-creating boundaries that are grounded in values, which might have to even say, I hear you, what everything that you're saying. And because again, this is where if the teacher might be attacking a parent, or a parent might be attacking a teacher, right? Let's refocus the priority and the goals. And you can right then and there lay the boundary of, but let's not name call, or let's not, right? Hopefully that's not happening, but sometimes it does. When people are really in their heightened emotional states, we can draw boundaries and we can set the expectations right then and there around when we are exploring these solutions together. We can partner together, but here we need to make sure that it's clear that we are not blaming the others. We are not shaming the others. We are working in community and in partnership on this. All right. I'm sorry, Camila, I don't have a clock in front of me. Oh, wait, there's a clock behind me.
You're good.
Oh, we're coming up 15.
10
Okay.
past, so you're
Thank you.
good.
Sorry. I think actually that was probably one of my last slides. I do put this in here because I do think it's important when to seek a third party for support. As administrators, we are carrying so many things, right? We have parents coming at us, we have teachers coming at us, we have the board maybe coming at us, whatever it might be. And if you feel like you don't have the time or the energy or the space sometimes to, like, and or if you find yourself getting too emotional, right? Like, this might be really hard for you because whatever the issue or the conflict might be, when you can tell, like, this is something I'm really passionate or emotionally invested in, and this is hard for me to see it sort of neutrally or see it from the other person's perspective, or try to hold this calm space for this many people because I just don't know if I have time to do it. This is when also like seeking a third party. That could be that you might be like hiring someone who does conflict resolution if it really is escalating and it's becoming, especially this last one, if you feel like there might be legal ramifications, or something that might be, involve a more serious matter issue. It's always, I would say, better to get someone who's maybe more of an expert in this. But this could also be if you have like a school counselor, or if you have a social worker or someone else who may not be part of the issue between the parent or the teacher, or between the teacher and the administrator or whatnot, but they could maybe hold space as a third party to sort of do this mediation and facilitation to really help both parties be able to hear each other out. And it really starts just one-on-one with active and reflective listening with one, active and reflective listening with the other, and hopefully ideally both together can come up with some sort of resolution and next steps and planning to then be brought together. But it sometimes might mean the third party still needs to be there because they say, well, I still don't feel safe having this conversation with this person. Cool. But this middle person who's talked to both, would you feel supported if I'm in the room with you both? But remember, I'm going to make sure and hold you both accountable. And again, that's where you're setting the boundaries, the values, the goal. You're holding that framework for them. So often that's helpful when a third party we feel like might be needed. Okay, and that comes to the end of my slides. I've just put this up here. This is a QR code to my website if you'd like more information. As I said, I work with schools. I do consulting such as this, coaching with teachers, with parents. And if you, for your parent body, if you're interested, I'm running a conscious parenting workshop, which is a lot of this. It's like understanding our triggers and how we support our children through their big emotions. And I'm doing that in December for a 3-week series. So feel free to check it out. Thank you for sharing. I will stop my screen sharing, so that I can see if there's any questions. Happy to, if you again want to unmute, or if you want to type it in the chat, happy to take some time to just chat. I hope this was helpful. You're welcome, Vicki. And yeah, if there's like anything anyone wants to chat about specifically, of like, I have this situation, you don't need to name names, but you're welcome to put your situation that your friend might be in. Do you propose doing onboarding new parents individually or as a group? Oh, great question. I would say onboarding new parents really can be in so many different ways. The school that I worked at for a long time, when we had like the initial parent meetings, because we were also a school that like we had wait lists, and so we would have to like do meetings early on, but we were pretty like honest and forthright up front about what it means to be a parent at our school. And it means like volunteerism, or, your financial contributions to fundraisers, or, and you can even put in there like grace and courtesy and respect for all, right? Or coming to parent eds. That's just such a big one. Come to parent eds, because then you will understand our community and what we do. So that might be a more individual thing, but for sure, parent eds, like group orientation, I think group orientations are great because everyone's sort of hearing the key points that you want. So I think you can do it either way. I think it depends on maybe the size of your school too, because individual obviously would take a long time. But if you have a bigger school to get to more, and then you'd want to offer parent orientation at least twice too. So like a morning and an evening, so that people really can access it, or record it. So again, and then even say like, this is a real priority if this is going to be part of establishing school norms and values, that they are coming to orientation or joining via Zoom or watching the video, so that they are hearing the expectations or the norms. Good question.
I got a private message here.
Yeah.
If you have any tips for handling like negative gossip culture happening a lot,
Yeah.
particularly amongst staff, like are there any strategies for tackling that?
Yeah, for sure. And again, that's that like toxic culture that can permeate, right? And so that too, you want to try to speak one-on-one. Um, and this is tricky because it's like, I heard like hearsay, right? I hear. But what you do in those situations is you bring them in, and ideally you bring them in, and if you hear, like, for example, someone's gossiping about this or that, you don't just start off with saying, so I hear you're talking about so and so. You might start by just almost, it's like we do with children. Like, I want to see if they are going to fess up with these little like nuggets I drop of just like, I wanted to check in. I've just been wondering how you've been feeling about whatever the like, and the right situation might be, and leave leave those awkward pauses, because I will say those awkward pauses are often like, oh crap, they know something. um and ideally, like, if they don't fess up and say like, yeah, you're right, I have been talking or whatever, I'm not even sure what the issues might be, but oftentimes it's just, I've been wondering how you've been feeling about this, da, da, da. And then again, you can start playing some empathy guesses or questions of just curious, just wanting to make sure, you're feeling comfortable, like that is there anything, in terms of the new assistant or whatever it might be, I'm not sure. But try to hopefully ask again the right questions to get them to be able to share. And if they're just like, nope, everything's fine, and like don't want to pretend like nothing's wrong because they don't want to talk to you, the administrator, about it, it might just be a reminder. And again, hopefully you've done staff orientation, or it's in the staff handbook or whatnot, that this is here. And then you might want to just leave with this little nugget if they continue to pretend like nothing, they're not part of anything, of just, I just want to remind you, because it's really important to me that everyone here feels safe and supported. And if there is ever anything that's bothering you or concerning you, I hope that you'll come to me and or directly to the source to resolve it. Like, I just would not want anyone to feel like there's just like cafeteria conversation or whatever. I'm not sure what might be the gossipy place that people are meeting, but it's just really important to me that this is a safe community for all to feel valued and respected. And if there's anything that you're feeling like you want to speak to me about, you're always welcome. And or if there's, anything that might be of concern to you, I hope that you'll go to that person. And usually when you put it that bluntly, they're like, what, like, what do you know? What do I, and then it's genuinely like coming from a place of like, yeah, tell me what's going on. I want to hear you. And you kind of start that peace process all over again, right? Being just go slow, no judgment, asking, empathizing with whatever might be coming up for them. And hopefully then they do share, right, what is going on. But ideally you want to start by really non-threatening, just asking questions, making some curious empathy guesses. If they're still not, then I would recommend kind of putting it out there of just wanting to know and see what they pick up from there, and then and go. Because you also want to be careful that like you're not, it is maybe hearsay, like, right, if you are calling someone in and like, I heard you said this or whatever, like they're being like, no, I didn't, like what, and then you can start this really defensive whatever. And and if there is a misunderstanding, it's always, if you feel like you got it wrong, model humility by saying, I am so sorry, I got that wrong, I was hearing something that I guess wasn't accurate. And again, my job is to keep everyone safe, so I thought that that's what I was doing, and I did not mean to offend you by wrongly, saying that you did something that you absolutely did not. So thank you so much for letting me know that I got it wrong, and I'm not here to be right, I'm here to get it right. I love, have you ever heard Brene Brown say that? I'm not here to be right, I'm here to get it right. And that means owning when we make mistakes. The chat. Can I read this out loud? Well, just
Yeah,
this for me
sure.
to process it. Yeah. Okay. We had a situation today where a teacher demanded her break be at 12:30. We had the break teacher not here today. Oh, and she wanted her to be flexible. We wanted her to be flexible. She told us she would pass out if she did not get her break right at 12:30. Our head of school went in to relieve her at 11:45, and she told her this was not a good time, that she could not leave because the children were eating. Our head of school told us this was the only time she could relieve her. She went storming out of the room. Oh, what else could we have done? This teacher's in her early 20s. Oh man. That's tough because it looks like you guys tried your best to find, and this is again when you think of that like Venn or that diagram of like collaborating, avoiding, compromising, right? To me, I think you guys found what you thought was a compromise of like, okay, it's not exactly perfect. Somebody has to give and take a little bit. And to this teacher, she probably felt like she was accommodating, right? Like, fine, you're getting your way, but I'm not getting my way. So I think very much you can go back and just acknowledge like that, even just to say, hey, I get that you had to accommodate to our schedule. And we tried our best to compromise here. I know it wasn't the perfect solution. And thank you so much for accommodating. Just like I think honoring and naming how she probably felt about it. And I think to say, like, I get it. It is frustrating when the break teacher doesn't come into work. I bet that was it was frustrating for all of us. And I'm sure it is, right? Like when we're short staffed, and God, yeah, that's like such a real thing everywhere. We're short staffed and people are frustrated, and it's not the administrator's fault and it's not the teacher's fault. And it's not right, but it's just like people get sick and we're in a teacher shortage crisis. So like I think it's okay to just name and acknowledge, like, I know it is, I'm sorry. I wish that we did have more, right? Or maybe it is we are trying our best to hire more subs or whatever it might be to work to resolve it. But I think it's okay to just validate and empathize with why they were really upset. And also I get that this, and it could have been, who knows? She may have at 12:30 like had a plan to like call her best friend and was upset that like now she can't talk to her best friend. Then there could be so many other things, right, that was upsetting the situation. So I think just again, assume good intent. Impact was of course negative. So it's okay to say, I know that you wanted it here, and I'm so sorry we couldn't find a happy medium that we were both agreeable on. I appreciate you commenting. I'm sorry if that inconvenienced you, if you had other things that you had planned at that time. Because that's really right. So much of, I think, sometimes when people get upset, it just wasn't aligned with their plans. And we don't know always what that is. So we have to just assume that, okay, there's a reason they're really upset. And you can ask those questions too, right? I wonder like why that break time was so important to you. And I'm guessing maybe you had some commitments or other obligations. Got it. Thank you so much for letting us know. I'm really sorry that it didn't work out the way you were hoping for today, right? Because again, when the more we all can communicate exactly what we need, the better we can get to resolving the problem. So next time, and you can even say to this teacher, next time, just let us know if you had this other commitment or priority, and we will try our best to figure it out. Unfortunately, today we just weren't able to find someone to give you your break at that exact time or whatever it is. Because I think everyone just wants to be heard, and you don't have to solve or correct exactly, but just being heard and knowing that you're aware, for especially for next time if there was some other reason that made her so upset. Thank you, Beth. And then I see Wally asking, sometime a person shares something in confidence. How do you discuss this with the target party without involving the person who shared the information with you? Oh, great question. Really, I always say empower that person to go right to whoever it is that they are having an issue with. And I name that, and I just say, like, thank you so much for sharing. And I'll ask them first. Thank you so much for sharing. It sounds like you're feeling really I remember having like two teachers that constantly were sort of at odds with each other. And if one sort of complained about the other to me, I would kind of right away just say, so what I'm hearing you say is you're upset that so and so did X, Y, and Z. So what's your next steps with that? And I really just put it in their court of like, okay, this is not just a excuse the like language, but not just a bitch session. Like we're here to resolve too, right? And so what are you gonna, so what's your plan? What's your next steps? And sometimes they'd even look at me like, what do you mean? Like what do you mean next steps? I was like, well, what are you gonna say to them? Are you gonna let them know, or how do you want to go about this? And they're sometimes like, I don't know. Or do you want me to interview? Do you want me to like help facilitate or say something? And then they're like, no, I don't want them to think I'm gossiping, whatever. But like, okay, so what's your plan? Because I don't want it to feel like this is a continuing issue or problem. Like I would love, and genuinely you want to be there to like, how can I support you to have the confidence or the skills or the tools to be able to have an effective conversation with this other person. Because again, you don't hopefully want it to escalate. You genuinely want them to figure out whatever the solution, how to get to the solution in a way that feels good for both. So you can genuinely then be a person of support and advice to like I even think of the Montessori grace and courtesy lessons of like, okay, how is it that you want to say this to that person? Let's do a role play. I'll pretend to be that other teacher and I'll act out this scenario and what might come up, and we can kind of brainstorm how this might go. So you genuinely, I would hope, want to empower them themselves to have the tools, have the confidence to resolve it on their own. And I would say, this is going to be anywhere and everywhere that there's going to be, we all need to vent, right, about certain colleagues or whatever, but it's like who you do that with and where. Like you can go home to your spouse or your partner and you could do that, right? But I think it's really important of like within our school community and culture, like that's again one of those things that proactively with onboarding that you can say, because we don't want to establish a culture like that. And like again, I hope and I would want that onboarding culture is actually like always assume good intent. Like we find we might need to vent or whatever, but then also processing like, why is it that person did it? I'm sure they didn't do it to be malicious or whatever, right? They had a different intent. It's just that the impact might have felt a little hurtful. So I think assuming good intent on people helps to sort of just help us all be a little kinder and not accusatory. I hope that helps, Wally, just to hopefully gives you some language or some tools to help empower. Anyone else or anything else?
I'm going to share your website link as well.
Oh, thanks.
I know you shared that, but I'll just share it in the chat in case anyone wants to copy and paste it and reach out to Reena with any follow-up questions, or maybe you're watching this recording and you want to reach out to her. I'll include that in the comment section so that you can reach out to Reena. All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone who joined in and asked questions. And thank you so much, Reena, for a wonderful presentation. Lots of great strategies. Hopefully no one's having too many conflicts at their school this year, but it's inevitable. And it's important to have the right tools. So yeah, and as I mentioned, you can reach out to Reena with the link there. So if you have any questions or you're interested in getting some support, if anything, you can reach out to her. Next week, we're going to have a presentation on, well, it's an open forum / presentation. So it's very much come with your ideas. We'll be talking about how we can get parents just more involved in school life. So strategies for that, how we can set expectations for what we expect from our families, to holding them accountable, to coming to parenting courses and just being involved. It's important for retention. It's important for families that you really want living your mission. So we look forward to a good discussion on that. If you have any requests or recommendations for future town hall topics, you can reach out to me. I will include my email here in the chat. So if there's a topic that you want to discuss or anything, just reach out to me and let me know. I plan these around what the community is requesting. All right. Well, thank you so much, Reena, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Thanks. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Take care.
Thanks.